Oh, buongiorno. Here we go. Let's pray for the internet. Pray for the internet. What a disaster that was yesterday. I'll probably have to. I'm thinking maybe going live at some point Saturday. So yeah, maybe Saturday around 1 o'clock, and I'll do the video. I don't know. We shall see. Hi, Slim. Yes, I have the link here for you, Slim. I've sent it to Jake. Grace is in the house. How are you? Hope you're well, Grace. Living the dream. The Green Witch has arrived. Bonjour, la Green Witch. How are you, Ollie? Hope you're well. Living the dream on a Friday, innit? Hey, Friday weekend. Woohoo! Is it woohoo? Or you got to work on a Saturday? Like, not woohoo, mate. Not woohoo. So, Nelly's in the house. How you doing, Nelly? So good. They named her 3 times. Nelly, Nelly, Nelly. That's all I'm saying. Sugar Christian, how are you, sir? Are you well? Slim, there's the link. Before I forget, waiting for Jake Rooney. It's all good. As far as I know, the internet should work. I've done a big master reset yesterday. I was talking to BT, and they said do a master reset, and I've done it, and the phone cut off because the phone goes through the internet. I forgot. How stupid. But yes, hope you're well, Sugar Christian, on this Freaky Friday. Oh, it's a Freaky Friday. Yes, Slim and Jake will be discussing the Shroud of Turin. But it seems Jake is maybe still doing a bit of squatting quickly. Quick bit of reading. Dizzy's in the house. How are you, Dizzy? Hope you're well. Oh, yes, I'm looking rather black. Everything's black here, isn't it? Yes, it is. So, yes, it's all good, but how you doing, Alan? I think so. It got a master reset last night, and it's been okay since. I don't want to jinx myself, but you know, I'm very well. Excellent, excellent. Good to hear. I'm good. I got coffee. I had to quickly add some cheese toasties. I did. Yep, cheese toasties. Didn't have long. I was like, no, I'll have cheese toasties. Dunk it in my brown sauce. Thank you. Thank you very much. But no, I'm all good. It's all living the dream. But I'll have to repost. I don't think. Oh, I thought someone popped in the back end there. I don't know, Jake or Slim. That was a quick. I saw a quick flicker at the corner of my eye. My peripheral vision, ladies and gents. We don't know who that might have been. Oh, it's Doctor Jake. Doctor Jake. How are you?
How are you?
On acid, apparently.
Yeah.
I
thought you were song then, good. Doctor. Don't you know burning?
Yeah, I've got that one going on. Internet seems to be working. I'm happy.
Good.
So, hey there, Bobby. Slim, you've had how many days? And you need 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Sorry, I was just adjusting my chair.
I will post it again if you need it. So.
Yep, I've got my bulletproof vest.
My screen suddenly went curly whirly.
And it's frozen. It's a good
Did you see that?
Yeah, it froze.
It was funny. Like, it cannot go for it.
Oh, no, it's working now. No, maybe not. Oh dear. This is the problem that we had last night as well. Is it frozen?
This is ridiculous, mate.
Well, what I know is it when it cools down after a few minutes.
Yeah. Oh, out of a possible 500, I'm getting 1. 2, 3, 4,
Goes online.
5.
Who's playing
Wow.
video games?
I've got. So.
That's what it is. Someone will be playing video games.
Oh, better not. It will wind me up rotten. But I couldn't even get angry at BT because it was a woman on the phone, and I don't shout at women, so it's nice.
Have you got a lot of usage on with your setup?
You can have connect.
So it's cutting in and out.
I'm back again. I'm fuming. I'll tell you this. What am I paying for?
I don't know. I don't know. Is they using up all of the broadband? I don't know. But it might settle itself down. Is it just one of us that you can't see, or is it both of us?
This is nuts. Oh my god.
It could be a StreamYard issue.
What is it doing?
There might be StreamYard. Or yeah, check your
Slim and Bloomin' Jake start.
Check your memory usage on your computer as well. It could be that.
I've only got StreamYard open.
Well, it should be all right now then.
You'd think.
It's okay.
This is 100%. Hey, what?
It seems a lot better now.
Great. I don't know what's going on with this. I'll tell you, the refund. It's supposed to be. Do another speed test. See how crap it really is. It's ridiculous.
Well, hi everyone. It's nice to see you. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else can. On the internet speed.
So it is. Okay. You guys. Well, who knows what's happening? This is all part of the drama. Especially after the show. Oh, you're back. Yes, Pansy, I have seen those leaflets. A fucking disgrace. Disgraceful. I mean, what's the point giving them leaflets when they can't even speak English?
Yeah.
Why not just save the money on the printing costs by shooting the boats?
That'd work too.
That's what I say.
I don't know. Did do a video on that brochure thing. There is a video up.
I saw that you had a video on that. And I would have watched it were I not busy preparing for this evening.
Yes, that seems to be the reason all my views have plummeted, because Jake is educating himself on other stuff. Disgraceful.
Sorry, I will watch it later.
Yeah, promise, Gub, said no one ever.
I always watch and comment. I see. The Caledonian's here.
Yep, Slim's in the house, taking his drugs quick. Look. It's going to be a performance enhanced with drugs by the looks of it.
I've had.
So,
I can't hear you, Slim.
he's like, that's how you win an argument. Speak in silence.
Can't hear
Silence is
you.
golden. He muted himself.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Aye.
I've had nothing but trouble getting online.
Oh, telling me, mate.
And now you're
What's
sideways.
going wrong with mine? He's going crab style. Oh, there he is. That's it. That's
Oh,
better.
And I
so
just-
it's not just my end being a pain. Oh,
Is it working?
ridiculous. Yep. It seems to be working.
Well, you can
I
always
can't-
cut.
I forgot
I should try and straighten this up. Give the world a good look at my face. May not want a good look at my face right enough. I may be happy I'm not looking at my face.
So the Shroud certainly got people talking.
Yeah,
talking
tongues
to
are
not
wagging.
Yep. They're like, I hear what you're saying. I don't really hear what you're saying, and this is what I'm saying.
Well, as long as there isn't any pitch battles, and you know, we don't want the torches and pitchforks out again. It's just knowing the spirit of the channel.
I was very surprised. It was like Northern Ireland in the chat last time. It really was.
Bloody Sunday.
Yeah, it was a straight down the middle split, very vicious. So I'm sure we'll have more sectarian division this evening.
Yep, definitely.
Sectarianism's a problem, isn't it?
Sure is.
Sadly.
Those things like that, Bobby. Hello, Bobby.
Unfortunately, Bobby's one of the moderates tonight, I think.
Will be nice. I think there's probably someone though that we won't be seeing, so yeah, there is that.
What I'll do is a quick poll, and we'll do it later afterwards. We'll see if anything's changed. It's going to be a simple one.
About the lighting. Carry on without me for a second.
I think that's a good idea.
No worries, mate. Right, there you go. You got your options. 1, 2, or 3. Is the Shroud Jesus?
Oh, that isn't what the topic of the debate is, though.
Here it is.
No, the topic of the debate was real or fun.
Yeah, so is it Jesus? Yes or no?
Well, that's a different question.
Not in my eyes, that ain't. I'm not as educated as you. To me, it means the same thing. Is it Jesus? Is it real? If it is real, it's Jesus. If it's fake, it's not.
Well, let's ascertain straight from the get-go. It's a real something.
Yeah.
Well, we'll discuss what it is at length.
Yeah.
Well, it's a real item.
Let's see if... Hang on. Oh. There you go.
Okay.
Is that better? A quick edit.
That's fine.
Oh, it should just be one of them, shouldn't it? Real or fraud? You're like, is it real or fraud? Yes. That makes sense, does it?
Oh, it makes sense, yeah.
But he's saying, is it real or fraud? Yes, it's real or a fraud. No, it's real or fraud. That makes sense, does it?
Yeah, it does, because it can be one thing or it can be the other thing.
Right, we'll go with that then. Oh. Right. Is that up? Right, it should be up now. I don't know what I'm pressing. I don't know whether is it real or a fraud. I don't know whether I'm saying yes or no here. I've confused myself.
Then you have to put 3.
But I'm adamant it's a fraud. So I don't know if that's yes or no though.
That would be.
I've only put down it's a fake since I'm actually defending that position.
I'm going to insist that it isn't a fake. That's my position. And the opening shots have been fired. Okay, that's good.
Well, since we have opened, I shall let you make an opening statement if you would like to, Jake.
I would like to, sir. Thank you. As soon as the wizard grants us permission, we shall begin.
Yep.
Nice.
I've got my phone here. Let me get my clock. How long do you want for your first bit? 5 minutes or 10 minutes?
5 minutes, please.
Made a mistake there, Jake. You could have asked for 3 hours, filibustered it into a win.
I don't use any of those tricks. I'm not Andrew Wilson either.
Good man.
Right, just making sure I said it right. Okay, that's cool.
Personally, I think 10 minutes is too long. Yeah, 5 minutes is fine. And obviously we don't have to use all that up if we don't want to. But I personally, I think 10 minutes is too long for people to listen to and retain all of the information.
That poll was crap. I'm just going to get rid of it. I'll confuse myself a bit as well. Yeah, it's 50-50, whatever. Yep. Right. I've got me thing here. And obviously when you're talking, guys, at certain points, can you see that? That's right, isn't it? Nice size. You'll see it counting down what you've got and everything, so we'll keep it cool. When someone's talking, I will mute the other 2 microphones because we don't want anyone jumping in and getting excited. So you have to control it, Slim. Deep breath. Puff the inhaler. Relax. So we do 5 minutes, 5 minutes. Then I think we can do, so you're going to listen to what each other's saying. So do your 5 minutes and 5 minutes. And then what do you reckon? Just 2 minutes each answering what they've said. And then we open it up.
I think we should have, after done our opening, I think we should have an additional 5 minutes to develop our arguments.
Do you agree, Slim?
I'm happy to go along with it. I don't think 5 minutes is required, and it seems like a lot of talking. Right. Although I'm a person that does a lot of talking.
You can concede time when you felt you've had enough. That's not an issue. So yeah, as when you get to the end of it, just say, and I concede my time. That's not a problem. So that solves that problem, doesn't it? Oh. It's too late. I'm already excited. No point I'm hiding. Ollie, go. 10 minutes, blooming out. How long do you want to be here for, Triggered? You can say what you want in the chat, Bobby. I'll be putting up on screen as and when, so it's all good. Oh, look, it's getting serious. Jake's got a spotlight on him. He's getting into it.
Actually, I've opened a blank document because I can't read my notes. It's too dark. So it's just, I'm going to move across, but I can't see it. There's that better.
Is it like Jesus is against you because he knows you're going to be telling porkies?
Don't look at the massive spot that's here, that I'm not telling you is there. Don't look here.
Look at my edge, mate. My edge, one big spot. Right, I'm ready to, let me mute Slim. Sorry, Slim, you've been muted. So you can scream and swear now. We can't hear you, so that's good. I will mute me in 2 seconds. But when you're ready, mate, I'll click the start button. Can you see it? If I hold it at that angle, and then when you're ready, and what I'll do is I'll hold it up when there's like 30 seconds left, mate. Just so you know, yeah.
Brilliant, thank you.
So
I'm ready.
Are you ready? Let's go.
Thank you very much, Wizard. Thank you, the honourable gentleman, for turning up this evening. Not on time, but thank you for being here. And thank you also to the chat for being here this evening. I hope that we have a fair fight this evening, unlike earlier in the week. I'd like to begin my opening statement by addressing the strongest arguments against the Shroud. 1988, 3 laboratories radiocarbon dated a sample of the cloth and dated it to between AD 1260 and 1380. In the 1350s, as in Lyrae in France, we also have the first completely secure appearance of the object we now call the Shroud of Turin. These are both extremely serious matters for my argument. We have a dated piece of radiocarbon material. We also have a documented case in print. Very, very difficult oppositions for this argument. If that's the evidence we possessed, the argument would probably be pretty straightforward. It's a medieval cloth, it's a medieval relic, and it's a medieval image. But that isn't all the evidence we possess. There is another possible timeline, an alternative timeline that can take us from the time of the death of Jesus right throughout recorded history up until the date of the 1350s, when we first see the Turin Shroud being recorded as being in Turin. That's something I will go through later on, as obviously there's not enough time to go through it now. We will discuss how its transference from the Holy Land through to France. One of the main reasons that it's difficult for people to trace this is because it was always known as the Shroud of Turin, of course, not until it was placed in Turin in the 16th century. So before that, what we're going to have a look at is some of the names it was known as before it was known as the Shroud of Turin. Now, I'm not claiming that this is a proven chain. What I'm doing, I'm putting forward a plausible hypothesis that could explain the provenance of what is undoubtedly the most famous piece of the world. Now, the other thing that's important is what we're dealing with is not a picture. This isn't an ordinary medieval painting. What we have is not an image that somebody has brushed onto a piece of linen. What we have is something that is extraordinarily superficial. The chemical alteration responsible for the colour has been measured at 200 nanometers on affected fibres. That is 2 10,000ths of a millimetre. Beneath that exceedingly thin alteration, the fibre remains essentially unchanged, which is very, very important. There's no conventional layer of paint that's responsible for that body image. Its tones are produced by the distribution of different coloured fibres. Most importantly, image intensity has been shown to correlate with the distance that would have existed between the cloth and body. This means that the process that was used, the intensity and the spatial awareness of the piece yields a 3-dimensional information about a human form. So the obvious question is, therefore, how did somebody make it? Is it an image that is of Jesus, or is it an image that is from Jesus? Belief itself cannot transform a medieval image into a first-century one, but it can produce history, which is what I intend to do this evening. Now, notice that I began by addressing the strongest arguments against my own case. I don't need to have proof that this is Jesus. All I'm trying to prove is that this is a real artifact of mysterious origin. I'm going to put forward a hypothesis that it could well be Jesus. The fact that it is or isn't wouldn't undermine the argument. By the same token, I wouldn't need to prove the resurrection. I don't even need to prove that the shroud is first century. What my case revolves around is the fact that this piece of cloth is of extremely important provenance. It is one that has a documented history, and my case is cumulative rather than considerably narrow. So, all of these facts exist in tension, we shouldn't turn that tension into a miracle or make it appear simply because it's inconvenient. Perhaps the shroud is medieval. Perhaps its early history will eventually be demonstrated. Perhaps somebody will eventually discover exactly how its image was created. But I put forward to the honourable gentleman, if not an extraordinary event created this image, then what did? Thank you.
There we go. Wow, very, very good, very good. That was interesting. That was very, very interesting. Oh, I don't want to press that. Right. Ladies and gents, we have heard from Jake. He must now be silenced. Slim, your microphone is active. And it is your turn, sir. You have 5 minutes. I'm just looking forward to listening to your accent because I love it.
Thank you very much.
But anyway, when you're ready, mate, I shall hit. I have to count to 1 because I hit it by accident. You've lost a second and I can't have that. So, right,
No
when
worries.
you're ready, mate. And we shall begin.
I'd like to thank my learned friend for his prose, his extended description of his case. My case today is trying to revolve around certain facts rather than anything spiritual or supernatural. I would like to make an effort to present my case in such a way that any detective would be happy to say that the facts are reasonable. The shroud itself was first documented in the year 1200 or thereabouts, first mentioned. It has very little provenance insofar as any reasonable or recorded history. It does in fact tie up with the biblical description of a shroud or of burial wrappings. It has also been damaged, been washed, and has been involved in a lot of manhandling, which does muddy the waters slightly as to any real provenance given by radiocarbon dating and such like. My whole thing is going to hinge on certain facts that have been given by scientists and by intellectuals over the years. I don't have any real opinion on the shroud. It's not something that I feel strongly about. I believe it does have certain spiritual strength because people believe, and even using only placebo effect, I think that's important. I don't have anything further to add at the moment, so I'll just yield that time and we'll go on with the debate. Quite happy to back and forth. I don't think there's going to be any real bickering involved. Thank you very much, and I hope you all enjoy the evening.
Well, you've done it all in 2 minutes and 5 seconds. Can't be bad. Can't be bad. So, yeah, Jake, would you like to just start the discussion with Slim, or do you want to come back on anything you said, or?
Yeah, there's quite a few things I'd like to go over, and I think Slim would probably quite like to go over and establish his facts as well before we do a back and forth, because I don't think we've really had enough time to establish our argument as such. If the honourable gentleman doesn't object, of course.
Feel free, sir.
Yep. Would you want 5 minutes?
Yeah, please.
Yep. Right, let me mute Slim. Get ready to mute myself. Right, 5 minutes. Go on there, mate. You are good to go.
Thank you very much. Now, my first point that I would like to address is an alternative timeline for the shroud. This is a direct challenge to the honourable gentleman's claim that the first appearance of the shroud is in the 13th century. So, here is an argument for an alternative timeline. In approximately AD 30 or AD 33, we're not entirely sure which, we know that Jesus was crucified under the reign of Pontius Pilate. We know thanks to Mark 15:46, that Joseph of Arimathea bought a stone and wrapped the body in that particular stone. We know from Matthew that Joseph is wealthy, therefore the linen is probably expensive and probably imported. We know from John that the burial linen remains with the body after the body is absent. Therefore, we have considerable evidence that we can cite in the Bible that points towards the existence of a burial shroud from the time of the Gospels. Between the 1st and 3rd centuries, there is not a secure custody record for the burial cloth. However, Wisniewski, 2019, developed the argument that relic culture emerged in later antiquity. Therefore, science would be compatible with preservation or loss at that particular time. So, in other words, it would be compatible with the time for items not be mentioned, because in that particular time period, there wasn't a culture of showing or displaying relics. 385, Eusebius begins a correspondence that is known as the Abgar-Jesus correspondence, or rather, this is when we first hear about it. This is where a chap called Abgar, these are some ridiculous names you'll have to hear this evening. Abgar, who is writing to Jesus to ask for his help. And at that particular time, this idea was put into print in 385 AD. And this is associated with being associated with the shroud, which apparently travelled along those lines to my next point, which is in 384, when we discover that there is this image in Edessa. It's not reported as being miraculous. Again, I'm not arguing that this could be the famed Mandylion, but certainly we know that there is an image that's being passed around by this time. By 593, Evagrius Scholasticus, that is his real name, described the Edessa image as a Theoteuctos, or in English as God made. So by 593, we have a scholar who is describing the Edessa image as being God made. This is the same image that I am linking to the Abgar tradition that dates back primarily to the Gospels of Jesus. During the 6th and 7th century, this cloth was apparently folded into 4 pieces. This was known by a specific and peculiar Greek word, which is tetradiplon, which means to fold in 4 places. Now, when the shroud is folded into 4 places, it gives us an image where we can only see the face of the image. Now, in 944, there's a physical image in Edessa. There's also an object known as the Mandylion, which is transferred to Constantinople. From this point, we have a relatively secure history. So the relic, according to Guscan 2009, is if the legend exists and is real, the relic itself certainly existed by the date 944. Gregory Referarius gave a sermon connecting the Edessa image with the Passion of the Christ. This indicates knowledge that is beyond what we see of the face of the shroud. In 958, Constantine VII explicitly claims that he possession of Christ's burial syndone. There is also the existence of the Mandylion, which is the face of Jesus. So there's a possibility that there is more than one cloth in existence at that time. One, a full burial cloth. One, a face cloth. We then see that the shroud becomes more prominent in literature beginning at around 1171. But as time has run out, I won't go into any more specifics. Suffice to say that we can date it in literature earlier than my learned colleague said, and I would date his earliest appearance as 1201.
Perfectamundo, literally to the second, mate. That was good. Slim, are you wanting any time to come back on that, or are you going to concede the lot, or what would you like to do, sir?
I would give that a short response. The information Jake has given. I have witnessed some of it. Not all of it, so I can't respond to all of it, but there is certified and proven information that we know relates to that item. There is a face cloth, Jake is correct in that's been circulating since a much earlier date. Some of that information I would like to think or believe actually refers to the face cloth, which I have information on, we can discuss later. The shroud itself, there is no mention of anything of that size mentioned in such an expansive piece of cloth. The cloth that we now call the shroud does have copycats. There are several out there still to this day, and the face cloth still exists. Now, it is the case that forensic evidence from a face cloth and the shroud do match to some degree in the same blood type and group. That's evidence on Jake's side of the fence to say that it is potentially an actual holy relic from the Messiah. I will concede that these things are out there and need some further discussion. Jake mentioned earlier that the cloth and such like was probably imported. That is the case. It would need to be imported from probably China or India. But both of these fabrics made in that 3212 fibre or 3212 fabric tended to be made in silk, and there's no actual record of that fabric being made in flax linen at that early time period. It was mostly used for very expensive, high-grade materials for royalty. So, at the moment, there isn't a great big bone of contention in any of these things. So I'd like to pass it back and hear some further argument or further discussion.
Yep, that was 2.5 minutes. Right, get rid of the stopwatch. Won't need that anymore. That was good. That was good. Right, so the floor's open. Jake, do you want to say anything back to him, and then we'll get the conversation going? And I will mute myself.
One more area that I would like to briefly go over before we can into the back and forths. So just one more thing. Right. This time, I would like to look at the image, the icon of Christ. So, are we doing 5 minutes again?
I just realised I was muted and talking to myself.
You can have as long as you like, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. So,
just say what you want to say, and then when it's done, and we'll discuss it, mate. There's no point timing it, because like Slim, he's not saying, "Oh no, you have more minutes than me." Do you know what I mean? So yeah, just.
So I'm not going to sit here for a sign book. Don't worry. Okay. So the icon of Christ. So in early Christianity, there is no fixed physical appearance of Christ. There are various different images that you can find of him, from being short-haired to long-haired. So there's no sense in the early period after Christ's death of what his appearance actually was. Later, late antiquity, he has developed the famous long hair, beard, moustache. Good combo. That's why I went for it myself. The elongated nose and the physical prototype. Now we can date this iconography specifically to 550 with the Christ Pantocrator at Sinai, which is a very famous image. Probably you've seen it without realising it. It's the famous icon of St. Catherine's that presents the mature Christ that is recognisably within the later Byzantine type that we all recognise. Many Shroud researchers have identified similarities between the asymmetries in the face represented there and the later Byzantine type. And the image depicted on Shroud of Turin. So the significance of that is that by the 6th century, long before we find the Shroud of Turin in Lyrae, there is an authoritative Christ type that exists, broadly resembles the face that we see on the Shroud at Turin. Secondly, we see that the same image also appears in prominent imperial coinage relating to 692 to 695, which is the reign of Justinian II. We know that by the 7th century, the state is specifically reproducing this image, so it's become a cultural icon by that particular point. Now, the reason that that's important is because it establishes the fact that the image that we see does not necessarily have to have been created at that particular time, the medieval period. We can see the style, the artistic style of it, in fact, is far older. And we also know that around this time, a real physical relic, believed to bear the true face of Christ, was transferred from Edessa. Now, this may be the Mandylion, which is the famous face cloth, which was mentioned by my learned colleague earlier on. But there's also the possibility of the tetrapedilon, which is the cloth that's been folded fourfold, which would also only show the face of Christ. So it's open to interpretation how many of these cloths actually existed. But if we go back to the Gospels, we can also see that John mentions that there is more than one cloth that is in the cave. Therefore, it fits with what is written within the scriptures. Not that I really want to get into the scriptures. I just want to think about the historical facts that are mentioned. In 1192, there is the famous Prey Codex. I'm sure the learned colleague is familiar with this Hungarian codex, which securely, fairly securely, I would say, identifies Turin Shroud's documented appearance. It's a piece of, how can I describe it, pottery or clay tablet material, and it clearly has on it an image that depicts a cloth that has a double-sided image of Jesus, including holes and circles, which appear roughly in the same places where we see the burn holes on the Turin Shroud. And this is, I think, the most strongest piece of evidence that the shroud existed for the medieval period that is often associated with. We also have, in 1201, Nicola Mazzatti describing, God, this word is a nightmare, Constantinopolitan burial linen associated with Christ's naked body after the Passion. In other words, old Nicky Boy in 1201 said he had some burial linen Christ was buried in. This is then referred to by Robert de Clary in 1203, where he refers also to a burial shroud that was in Constantinople in which the Christ had been wrapped. And nobody knows the case of that particular relic, so it's possible that it could have gone from Constantinople and ended up in France, therefore proving the point I began describing earlier on, because the place where we first find it recognizably and unequivocally as what it is known to be today is 1355, when we know that the recognizable Turin Shroud appears in association with Geoffrey de Charny and Jean de Verney, and immediately afterwards pilgrimages began. So we know for a fact that it existed in 1355. I, however, would contend that looking at the cumulative evidence of the timeline and of the iconography and of the artistic style, I think that we can say that there is an argument for the item existing from the 1st century up until 1355, when we know that it's what it is. Therefore, it couldn't have been created as a medieval artifact at that time.
Well, there you go. Slim and Jake, discuss.
Absolutely. The earlier dates for the shroud have popped up hither and thither. One of the problems being that it can't be officially attributed to that piece of fabric. I've put a link in the chat there, was if you'd like to call it up. The very first mention of it isn't actually officially recorded in any official statement. You're right, there is a French chappie who did get it, and that is the date I mentioned earlier, 1200-ish. That seems to be the first official report of a shroud. And it was, I believe, that shroud that was located in Constantinople for quite some time that was taken to France. The French shroud, it became at that time, was then with one family for quite a while, hundreds of years in fact, before moving to another family who basically ran the show in Italy, the Savoys. If you scroll down in that, there's an official letter from unfortunately it is in French, but that's a link to it if you'd like to research it. And if you scroll down, there's information underneath it. That is the very first date that officially that piece of fabric can be attributed to somebody in anywhere that I can find that is recorded and reasonably can be attributed to that piece of fabric. The fabric itself, there are other things.
Can I just mention something? Is that okay?
Yeah, on you go.
Thank you very much. Can you just scroll that back up a little bit, just to where it's got the writing on there? Because I would dispute that just down a bit so I can see what the writing underneath it says. There's two bits there that are important. Thank you. Yeah, those bits, brilliant. I would dispute its first appearance in the historical record is in late 1389. As mentioned previously, I think it's very difficult for us to say that the shroud is not in literature before when there quite clearly are shrouds that are mentioned. The difficulty I think that we have is the name of the shroud. So if we're referring specifically to the item that we know as the Shroud of Turin, we can agree with the statement here. If, on the other hand, that shroud was known by other names before this point in time, it would stand to reason that there's no other mention of it under that name beforehand. Secondly, the bishop, Pierre d'Arcy, he mentions a medieval forger and says that, let me just find the exact thing that he says, because he mentions, there are two things about it. He mentions a forger, but he also, I think, mentions someone's name or something like that. Either way, I would not accept this as evidence. It's hearsay, because Pierre d'Arcy did not himself hear this forgery. It was not disclosed to him that it was a forgery. He's recounting somebody else's name that it's a forgery, who themselves is recounting it from somebody else. So what we actually have is hearsay that's here. Bishop has a very fair point. He's complaining that people, as they often were at the time, were using these medieval relics to rake in a fortune in churches. So it's not an unreasonable thing for him to have claimed. But I would push back that the evidence suggests that the Turin Shroud is not that item there.
Well, it does seem to be the one that the historical record, that item that's mentioned in that letter, does seem to be the item that was later pushed forward and sold to the family in Italy.
I would agree.
The problem we have before that date is the fact that there's no official record of, obviously they didn't have photographs back then, but there isn't an accurate enough description to tie it to any particular shroud, of which there are still several out there in various chapels and churches. There are also several face cloths in several chapels and churches. Right. Now, the problem we have with provenance is that you've got to have a written link, officially, a written link connecting one to the other. And even that earliest date of around the 1200 mark, I believe it was 1201 exactly. But that earliest date, there is talk of it, but there's no description. There's no sort of forensic connection to give it enough stability to put your feet on. You can't really put your feet on it and say, this is it, it's solid. And that's one of the problems I've had looking up any of this information. There is so much of it is pie in the sky and woolly. And in fact, there is a website out there that gives you, if you can believe it, a full timeline pretty much for the moment Jesus was lying in a tomb to the moment when he was actually, that shroud showed up in France. Now, it's obviously a fabrication, because if you can research any of the links and research any of the people involved in it, it's just not there. It's smoke and mirrors. And this is one of the things that we have to decipher between the fact and the fiction, if you like. Now, I'm willing to concede that could be's, but weasel words like could be's, might be's, if you're talking about forensic evidence and you put it before a judge, could be, a judge would kick that right into the weeds. Could be, might be. The problem we're having is solid fact, and I've tried to stick to the solid facts that I could actually connect one or two different things to a person, and I'm having a hard time with that with the earlier dates before 1200.
So I put it to the honourable gentleman, can you categorically disprove its existence before that time?
Absolutely not.
I rest my case, Your Honour, and we can move on. Now, there is evidence, as I have said, that could possibly, may possibly, could even be real, that dates it back to the first century. That is very, very true. However, what I would like to know is the following things. The image is essentially made from linen itself. It's essentially just a discoloration of it. There is no conventional image-forming layer of paint that would account for the figure that exists upon this fabric. It's an extreme superficial modification of the fibres that are there, which, as I mentioned, are, what is it now, 1/20,000th of a something nanometer, no, 2/10,000ths of a millimetre. So, how did that image get onto that cloth if it wasn't by any other means than an extraordinary event?
Well, that would depend on what you consider an extraordinary event for a start. There has been a gentleman who has faked a portion of the shroud already by basically imprinting a piece of fabric onto a heated element, which was a bronze statue that was heated in an oven. Now, the discrediting what it is and removing arguments from incredulity, it is hard to say what made it. But the fact that I don't know what made a thing or how a thing works doesn't mean it's magic, doesn't mean it's supernatural. The problem is we need to find out what it is before we can say it is a thing. That might sound a bit meandering, but like I say, there is a gentleman, the video's on YouTube in fact, where he takes a cloth and the fabric itself, Jake is correct in that it's been damaged on the very, very outer surface of the high lifting fibres, the external of the top of the fibres, if you like. That would indicate that it isn't a light, a radiation source, which would tend to burn through it. Radiation doesn't stop on the high points. It shines past it and inside a thing. So contact has been made with a thing to create that image. Now, look, that could be contact with a body. contact with a body that is in some way tarnished the surface. But I've got white shirts. I've got white shirts that have gone yucky around the collar where they contact my neck. Right? It doesn't make my old shirt a holy relic. Right?
It's a very good point. A very good point. Okay.
The problem is that these things that we don't know, we can't discount, we can't accept that we don't know as a fact. I don't know what made that image. Perhaps being contacted with such items as bronze statuettes, a bronze image in some way, as the gentleman actually done, and did create the facial image, which was very, very like it.
Okay, so we can agree then that the image can be replicated to an extent, but no copy has ever exactly replicated the shroud. Do you concede that?
I would absolutely, yeah.
Okay, good. Now, here are some facts, because I know that my learned friend here would like the facts. So let's have a look at the body that is described being on the image, or rather is impressed upon the image. The Gospels, which I have read one time ago, describe Jesus as being stripped, scourged, beaten, crowned with thorns, crucified with nails, left with unbroken legs, and pierced in the side, after death, and then wrapped in linen, which we can see in Mark 15, Matthew 27, and John 19 to 20. Now, I've already gone over what is mentioned about the resurrection, what are they called, cloth. But what I would put forward here is, as I said earlier, we don't know from the early images of Christ what he looked like, because there was no uniform image. There's no gospel image. What we do know, though, is that the Gospels say that his clothes were removed and divided amongst his soldiers, which we see in Mark and in John. Roman crucifixion often involved complete nudity, but the whole point of it was humiliation. The shroud does not follow the medieval convention of obscuring the genitalia. In fact, what we can see instead is the hands placed over it instead, which for medieval conventions is highly, highly unlikely. The scourging that we see on the body is unusually specific. It merely mentions in the Gospels that Jesus was scourged. The wounds that are found on the shroud, however, detail a very large number of repeated lesions distributed over the back, the buttocks, and the legs, many of which have a distinctive dumbbell shape that was sometimes used by Roman centurions. Now, many people...
flagellum.
Sorry?
A flagellum.
Exactly, yes. That was my, in fact, next line on here.
Sorry.
So the shroud does more than just let us know that it was scourged, because it particularly shows where and how brutal that scourging actually was, and that's unique to the shroud as a piece of artwork. The crown of thorns is an important one to look at, because we know that Matthew, Mark, and John describe a crown of thorns. Do not, however, describe its shape. Now, often in medieval art, it's depicted as a circlet around the forehead and around the cranial area. However, it could well have been, and it's been hypothesized by several scholars, that it was in fact more of a cap than it was a circlet. So it is something that was forced down across the whole head, digging in these very long thorns directly into the head, which wouldn't have been unlike having nails into your head as well as into your hand. And those are quite clearly reflected on the shroud image. The shroud face is asymmetric. Its features can be interpreted as being swollen, which links in with the description of Jesus having been beaten about the face, which is in Matthew, Mark, and John. Interesting, those asymmetries are preserved within the shroud. Medieval crucifixion normally places nails through the palms. Here we see it through the wrist. Now, one of the side effects of crucifying through the wrist is that it damages the medial nerve. We make one's thumb drop down like this so that you wouldn't then see that it was there, because the nerve has collapsed, it just falls. So there's one reason why the thumb imagery can be disputed. We know that Jesus was pierced in his side. We see a corresponding wound on the shroud. We know that there was blood-like flows occurring along the arms, scalp, side, and feet, and that the stains that we see on the cloth do correspond with these wounds. They do correspond with physical blood transfer. And more importantly, we also can see from analysing the bloodstains that are there that the bloodstains appeared before the image appeared, which would fit in with somebody placing a cloth over somebody who had died, because then the blood would be able to transfer directly to the cloth rather than drying and transferring later on. I hope that that was clear enough for everyone.
Are you complete there?
I guess I'm complete there. For these questions,
okay. The truth is, and it's one of the reasons that the thing has lingered as such a mystery all these years, is we don't have solid answers to those questions or those points. It is historically, I would imagine, or I would like to think, very accurate. The anatomic, if you like, projection is also very accurate, including the fact that he was spiked through the wrist and no through the hands, as depicted in most, well, predominantly Catholic iconography. The crucifixion itself and the style that the guy was injured and hurt and the plants used, need to swap, hang on, I've got it, I didn't take notes, I've got a lot of stuff up here. There's thorns called Gundelia turnifortii. I'll print that in. In fact, I can put a link in for it. That is often associated with the crown of thorns. There you go. There you go. And another. Sorry to be a bit slow here. I'm trying to respond reasonably and give people information. This pollen from this was found on the shroud. And this item here, if I can find it.
Do you want to hear them brought up, Slim, or are they just for reference?
Well, if you would like to show the images or such, like, it might be of interest to people.
So I also put a link in with some
evidence. This here is also, before I discuss them a little,
I missed it.
I've put another one in. Now this is the major culprit. The second link I've put in is a major culprit for what they consider to be the crown of thorns that was placed upon his head and crammed down painfully. There is evidence on the image, although we do need to remember that that image that we all see has been very, very enhanced. Very enhanced. And I'm not sure to which degree imagination has taken a part in that enhancement. There are pollen grains of that, and the one below it, which is a small fruit tree which is very spiny, the link below it. That's a common fruit which has been exported all over Spain, France, Italy, the Middle East, and in fact all the way to China they exported it. Pollen grains from that have also been located on the Shroud. They go hand in hand with the crown of thorns. Both of those. The other one that looks like a thistle is grown and cultivated in both Spain, Italy, France, and all around the Mediterranean area, because it's grown in people's gardens as a vegetable crop. The crown of thorns itself, it has been cultivated in Italy and France for as long as anyone can remember. Far from being local to just the Jerusalem area, it is in fact the case that these pollen grains could have got on the Shroud during ceremonies over its, if we take it even if it was belonging to Christ, these pollen grains could have got there over the last 2,000 years with crowns of thorns being laid upon it for different ceremonies over the years, or even just simply proximity. In Paris, for instance, the Lorraine in France, where the Shroud was in the early part of its known history, the botanical gardens in Paris did grow these vegetables. I say vegetables, the crown of thorns and the little thistle thing. These things they cast doubt on where the pollen has come from, because it is known that there is a ceremony where a crown is on display yearly. That means yearly for 2,000 years. These sticks and bundles of these thistles have been displayed in churches and chapels all over the place multiple times a year. Finding 36 pollen grains or 3 pollen grains really isn't a big evidence to say that it spent all of its time or what was created in Jerusalem. So the other evidence regarding blood and such like, I did find, and it actually is speaking against my case, I did find evidence that there's a rubinos or something that is created in the blood, showing that the blood placed upon it was from somebody that had been under supreme stress, had been tortured, basically, right? Now, this is actually against my case, but I'm not really here. I'm here to get to the truth, and the truth might not be in my favour. That's a simple matter of fact, right? I'm not going to tell lies or mislead people. But the evidence from such as the fabrics, you mentioned the fabric earlier, and that fabric wasn't known to be manufactured around the Middle East. It was manufactured, it's a 3-1 twill fabric. It was manufactured in India or China. That means it has travelled across continents already, along with other freight and other goods, of which these fruits heading back to China could have been associated.
Yes.
Right. Now this casts doubt on whether the pollen, the fabric, or any of the rest of it. What it's actually come down to is how the real evidence is how that image was created. And that's what I'd like to kind of focus on, because we don't know that bit. That's the bit that's really in doubt. How was that image created? The wrappings themselves, you mentioned the Bible. The Bible mentions an anointment that you didn't mention, so I'm going to fling it in there that his body was anointed.
It was.
These pollen grains are also found in these ointments.
Yes, they are.
So if someone had been anointed with these ointments for the Middle East, Jerusalem area we're talking about, the pollen grains would be associated with that, because there is oils from both of these plants that are used. As I said, the thistle. Sorry?
If we take that as how can I put it? We're not confirming this is what we're looking at is a plausible journey that this shroud could have gone on, where it could plausibly have collected those pollen grains. That I would say that was a reasonable hypothesis. It's not one we can prove categorically, but it's one that we can say this is likely that somebody such as Joseph of Arimathea would have had the wealth and would have had the connections to be able to purchase a piece of linen such variety. It's not unlikely that he wouldn't have been able to do that. So that makes it more possible for us. But I think you're absolutely right that the most important thing for me about this is how did that image get there? Because we do the radiocarbon dating and say, okay, that means it's definitely medieval. I don't think it necessarily limits it to medieval period. There is the invisible we theory that goes alongside as well. But I think the most recent theory regarding the image is Bob Rucker's neutron theory, which I'm sure my learned colleague is familiar with, where I'm not a nuclear physicist, obviously. I don't understand physics or maths because I'm from the Faculty of Arts. But my understanding is that a sufficient burst of neutron energy would be able to imprint such an image as the one we see on the Turin Shroud without burning it. And I think that it's something that we have to take seriously because it's a testable hypothesis. The only thing, of course, we can't test is the actual event that would have caused such a neutron burst, because resurrection is obviously a one-off major event, hasn't been replicated. We've got nothing we can test it against. All we can do is hypothesize about how things might have happened. And Rucker's neutron burst is a very reasonable means of looking at how a massive burst of energy, very brief, can suddenly fire through this cloth and discolor it. I think it's a theory.
That theory, and I've heard certain people talking about it, I think it appeals to people because it seems so scientific and so fantastic. I did mention radiation earlier. Radiation, sunlight is radiation. For anybody that isn't sure what radiation is, just stand in the sun. If you put a piece of fabric in the sun, whether it's for a short time or a long time, I had an old green towel that got ruined because I went away for a weekend and left it, and it got bleached white on one side. That's radiation that done that. Now I've got a two-tone towel that is half of it is bleached white and half of it is a deep emerald green.
And that's exactly how the image is on the shroud, because of the discoloration.
Well, that discoloration upon the shroud and upon the fibres, if you look closely at the fibres, the image itself and the discoloration is only on the uppermost, as if you put the shroud against something and contacted it, that is the only area that is discoloured, and radiation would shine around a semicircle of a fibre, and in every gap in the fibre it would shine through and hit the next available surface, meaning that image would be baked in beyond the superficial aspect of the fabric, and the image itself is only on the very outer edge of the outer fibres.
I would concede what you're saying there, but I would add to it in saying that it also is in image scans that the image depth isn't consistent across the entire image, possibly because the radiation has gone into the limestone that was besides where the shroud was kept.
Well, as I said, sunlight itself is radiation, and the shroud, although in a sheltered environment, has been open to light now for a very, very long time. I mean, if it's been on display since approximately 1385, that's a significant amount of time it's spent absorbing light. And even old masterpieces painted a couple hundred years ago become very discoloured very quickly. And as I said, a towel I owned got destroyed in one weekend, sitting on a line outside my shed. One of the things that I would like to mention that somebody else mentioned in the chat, and I did mention, that the image on the shroud isn't what people think it is for these photographs. And there's constant talk about it being a negative image, and such that the light bits and the dark bits are in contrast to each other the wrong way round.
I would say it isn't. It's not a negative, as in a photographic negative, but it has the same. It serves the same function that a negative would have.
Yeah, and that would come from direct contact with something. Was the point I was going to make there?
Sorry,
like
for interrupting.
Placing your face against a mirror. You don't see yourself in a mirror as other people see you. What you see is a reflection straight back, right? You see a negative image of yourself when you look in a mirror. I have a small mole, which it is a mystery to me why it's on the wrong side of my face when I see myself in a camera, because it's on the other side of the face every day. It's magic.
Yeah. No, that's true. That is very true.
So I would agree that it has had to contact something to get that negative profile, right?
Yeah, there's a genuine anomaly that I think we both will agree on, that on the top of the image you've got this tiny little radiation possibly inspired event that has put it on top of the fabric, so it's not going through it. But then you've also got the blood from the body that's going up into the fabric as well. So you've got two pieces of information that are being encoded in this cloth, and the blood penetrates the cloth, the actual fibers, deeper than the image that's on top of it does. And there is a slight gap that's there, which there would be a slight gap that's there because the shroud itself wasn't pulled over his face like cling film. You know, there would have been some little gaps that are in there. I think that also resolved in the image as well. And any image that, or any argument against it, has to consider how that was created. They made something that is like or has the same function that a photographic negative would have had at that time, which most people would say was in the 14th century. That they wouldn't be able to do that.
No, and wouldn't be able to do that is one of the big problems. That wouldn't be able to do that is actually the big issue in the whole investigation of the shroud, because the church itself has rejected most forms of investigation. Any form of investigation done on it has to be, and I quote, non-contact.
Yeah, that's right.
So, apart from the very small slithers of fabric that the nuns are supposed to have fixed after it gets worn out by being put on display, the invisible weave, as you called it, there is a difference, apparently. I'm saying apparently because none of the rest of the fabric has actually been tested for its fabric content, but they did tell you that the edges were done with cotton. There was a cotton content within the threads used, right?
Yes.
But there is no evidence that they've tested any other part of it to be pure linen. So how they actually come up with that, I don't know. These are the discrepancies in the story, as I said, where I think believers are keen on pushing it forward as a thing without any evidence. But naysayers have to have every piece of evidence going, you know what I mean?
I think the issue of radiocarbon dating is a very reasonable and fair one, because the sample is taken from one corner of the shroud. I mean, the whole shroud is 4.4 meters long. And they've just taken one tiny little bit from one tiny corner and have said, this bit's medieval, therefore all must be medieval, which doesn't really add up. And I think that what it really needs to have, and I can see why the church wouldn't allow them to do this, it really needs to have different samples taken from across the shroud so you can get a much better cross-referencing and testing process. And they particularly need to have samples that come from the image, but obviously coming from the image is going to destroy it, and it's already very fragile anyway. So I fully understand why they're not willing to do that. But the other thing that's interesting about that image is that it does map onto a 3D surface, including the but you don't see the sides, which you wouldn't because there were two pieces of cloth that were put together. That's another thing that I think is really, really interesting. The bit about, I mentioned this earlier, the shroud being cunningly painted. Yet that's true, but what that doesn't mention in this piece here is that the bishop himself wasn't the person that found out it was cunningly painted. He's reporting someone else saying that somebody told him that it was a forgery. He also doesn't specify that that was the Shroud of Turin either, so it could have been another shroud. As we know, as rightly said, we've already seen lots of examples of other shrouds, and there have been copies of shrouds. It's well known that that sort of thing took place.
Holy relics were big business and still are. It's estimated the shroud that you're in, per person brings in about €180 a day to the city.
Absolutely.
So there's big money to be made in it. Now that shroud, you mentioned that it's got gaps on the side where it wouldn't be touching them. As a burial wrap, it's a strange thing when the biblical report within the book itself says that it was wrapped in cloths, as was the fashion at that period. Separate cloths, which are easier to manufacture and cheap because they could be done in hand looms within people's homes. A piece of cloth like that shroud would have to be manufactured within a proper manufacturing facility, indicating that, as you said earlier, it would have to be imported. So if we take it back, the fact that a cloth was laid over it, one of the things that I'd like to get in maybe a slight discussion on was the reason that a body was wrapped in cloths. And it is an important thing.
It is important, yeah. Because it's to do with the Jewish traditions, isn't it?
It's more than that. It is actually more than that. It has a practical reason. Bodies are wrapped for practical reasons. They lived in a very warm environment with flies.
Yeah.
Lots of flies. Now, a body was wrapped quickly after its passing to prevent blowflies crawling over it and rapidly turning it into a bag of maggots. Now, a shroud laid loosely over a body wasn't the style a body was covered. That would be done in a sheet. And it would be done in a sheet for covering after the body was wrapped. And a body is wrapped tightly in those fabrics. They're not laid gently over the top of it. They're wrapped around it. And that's the reason that they use separate cloths and a face cloth. The face cloth is bound into place with other fabric wrappings around it. The wrappings are there to keep flies away from the body. That's the practical reason that a body is wrapped very quickly. So that face cloth would have been placed over his face and then bound into place with other cloths, folded and tucked, trying to create a labyrinth seal so that insects and such like couldn't get to the body and cause it to rot before they got to bury it. And by rot, I mean turn into a large bag of maggots.
Yeah, which it would have done, which again would explain why they have the spices and all of the anointing oils as well to help with a bit of preservation, but more with the smell, I would imagine. I was going to say, the difficult thing about it is I approached it, I don't know about you, but I approached it as, okay, let's say that this is a medieval forgery. Then who did it? How did they do it? What history do we have of their techniques? And looking into, there's no documented person who's forged it. We have one reference from Pierre d'Arcy, which is third hand, so I'm not going to include that as historically relevant. So we don't have any record of a forger. We just have someone else's account of it. We don't have any record of how it was done, and we don't see anybody in that period using similar techniques either. It's a specifically unique technique that has been used here. There might be elements that you can see, and there might be elements people even reproduce today, which is why you can get a visually satisfying Turin Shroud copy. But that doesn't mean that it's specifically exactly copy everything that's on the Turin Shroud, because I don't think it's possible to actually do that. Because you can't create something that has got, with the level of blood, level of image that's on there, the just the sheer ability to transfer that onto the cloth in the way that it has is absolutely extraordinary. Now, that does not mean that this was caused by the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and I'm not saying that it does. I'm saying that it doesn't matter. What matters is that people have culturally believed that this relic does show that for 1,000 years, pretty much. And that is something that is hugely important to culture. What I find astonishing, and where I found my mindset changing, is looking at it in terms of a medieval forgery. I found that there was a much stronger case for them not being able to do it than there was for them being able to do it. And then when I started looking back at seeing how it could possibly have traveled from the 1st century through various different places up until we get to the Crusades, I thought it was quite a reasonable proposition, particularly for items of that time. And so for me, it became a question of, well, I don't think something medieval can do it. I think that it's possible that such an artifact could have been transferred from the 1st century to the Crusades through Constantinople. Most importantly, there is no known technique that we can think of or that anyone can use that shows that this could happen. So I'm going to say that it's not necessarily an extraordinary event that's caused this, but what we have in it is an extraordinary piece of cloth of unknown provenance, of unknown origin. And if people want to believe that that is because of the resurrection, then they're perfectly entitled to, because it fits in with the iconography that is on the front. Therefore, I would say that it's not a strong argument that it's the resurrection. I think it's a very strong argument that there is a historically valid, genuine mystery that exists on a piece of fabric that even today we can't explain.
That was a very nice way to put it. And I did say earlier that the placebo effect of having these relics is important to many people. I'm also in agreement that the fact we don't know how it was made doesn't mean it is one or the other. That's an argument from incredulity, in fact, right? We don't know how it was. But I would say that the families that owned it were very, very, very wealthy. And if they knew of anyone that could do anything, like Mr. Da Vinci, for instance, the family that in Italy that owned the Shroud also employed Mr. Da Vinci. That means they were in a position to employ the very best artists and craftsmen in the whole world. If anybody in the world could have done it, they could have paid them to do it. That would have given the family access to something that clergy, and let's face it, just anyone invested or interested in getting a little bit of holy contact would have been interested in, and that had money behind it.
Of course they would. Big money. But if you had the family that ended up with the Savoys being the most famous ones, thinking of how wealthy they were in comparison with people, it's not implausible that people moving in those circles, not only would they have access to people who could make art, but they'd also have access to people who could acquire antiquities, and they would also have good reason for wanting to keep them secret from other people as well.
That's right.
So therefore, I would say that's another reason why it could have a much older provenance, because for much of its history it would have been under a different name, and it probably would have been hidden.
Well, yet again, we've got weasel words creeping in there. Could have, on both sides of it, because they could have employed someone to do it, and they could have had it, and it was real. We don't know. And that's the enduring mystery of the Shroud. It's the don't knows that have kept it alive so long. If somebody came out and burst the bubble and says this is how it was done, how it was made, and we know how everything was created, I think it would lose a lot of that magic, the mystery that it carries. But the sad fact is we don't know how it was made.
If we found out definitively what it was, it's still Turin Shroud, and there would still be people who believe that it's the image of Jesus, regardless of the evidence. Well,
it might be even more mysterious if for instance, it was man-made. because then it would have its own story. It would be its own meme. In mimetic stories, word viruses, they go on and they change, but they very seldom actually die. Some memes last forever.
They do. Absolutely. And I think that however we want to look at this image, whatever side of the argument you're on, you cannot answer how it's made, when it was made, and who it was made by. And those are the important things that we need to really establish if it's a forgery. So we can't do that. What we have instead is a really extraordinary image on this piece of fibre that nobody can explain how it's there. The only explanation that we've been given is that it is the resurrection. Now then it becomes a question of faith.
And that's where it maybe should rest. Maybe that's a fitting place for it. Now, as I said, there are others which are here and there. I think 4 there are in total. There are 3 others and that one, and several face cloths. But the Shroud of Turin and the face cloth with the same blood group and type are probably the 2 most realistic and honest for the faithful to believe in. The rest, you can get images of them online. You can go and visit them, in fact, if you want to spend your money in these churches and travelling. It's good for the tourist industry. But that one and the face, which I will give a link to, I've got a link somewhere for the face cloth. Hang on. There's that much. This is one of the problems in dealing with it.
If it is what it is, and if it isn't what we think it is, how much do you think it would be worth?
It's priceless. You can't put a price on it. It's beyond money. Even if it's proved to be fake, it's still an almost 1,000-year-old medieval relic that people have a lot of faith in. And even just for that reason, it would be priceless. But for me personally, I don't find this the most interesting religious relic. I find the Holy Grail is the most interesting relic. But I think that's more because I'm coming at it from a literary perspective, and the Holy Grail is more about searching, asking my questions, than it is actually about the cup of Christ being a real object. Whereas here we're dealing with something that is a real object that we genuinely do not have an understanding of. Yes, I see a lot of the chat is getting a bit lively, I see now.
I can't see the link that I had for that face cloth. There's images of it are harder to get than they are of the shroud because there's been less work done on it.
Now, don't get me wrong, the idea of a person who is dead suddenly being able to emit a high burst, very temporary burst of light that somehow manages to discolour the top layer only of fabric and then blends their blood into it. I find the idea of that completely implausible, but that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. And if we are talking about someone who is supposedly the Son of God, then it is not implausible that he would have had some extraordinary event, such as his resurrection, that we wouldn't be able to explain. That would make logical sense.
Absolutely. If it was a deity and a supreme being that created the whole universe in just 7 days, flashing an image onto a little bit of cloth wouldn't be a big deal, right?
That's one way of putting it.
No, seriously, I mean, if yet again, I have to use the weasel words if, because we don't know. And all the elements that we don't know, can't understand, or can't explain, or simply don't have access to. Now, if the Catholic Church was willing to hand it over and give it some close scrutiny, I'm sure techniques will develop whereby we can get far more information. There is another thing that is highlighted and people have mentioned repeatedly. Now, if that is Jesus, that means they have his blood.
Yeah, they can clone him.
They could recreate him. Yeah. Maybe that's
Yeah.
one of the things the church is actually concerned about.
Possible. I mean, if that blood is who they say it is, and we know they can clone animals, and we pretty much can guarantee that they've tried to clone humans, and yeah, it's likely. I would just push back though, where you said if and be these are words. When we're talking about history, particularly ancient history, I think that they're the only words that we can use because we can't say something categorical. We can only say something could be. We can only say that this is a reasonable hypothesis.
Absolutely.
So I think it's perfectly reasonable to say if in these circumstances.
One of the problems with history, of course, is accuracy. In the story of Wittmann, you know the tank commander Wittmann?
No.
Well, there's a tank commander, German tank commander called Wittmann. Everybody wanted him. He was a tank ace. He was a he was a sharpshooter with a tank, and he knocked out an awful lot of Allied forces' equipment. And as a result, everybody wanted him. Now, his tank was found on a battlefield. It was his tank. He got his tank shot. Very quickly, after his tank being found, several other tank commanders laid claim to having shot his tank. And then, over the next weeks, in a moving dynamic battlefield situation, over several weeks, there was approximately 36 other people laid claim to shooting Wittmann's tank. Now, it is actually possible that every one of these people did shoot Wittmann's tank, because that tank laid assembled on a battlefield with armour-piercing projectiles getting lobbed at it for 3 weeks. But who punctured it the first time and ruined his day? That's the big question.
Yeah. We can work some things out, yes, but going back this far, though, it's impossible for us to be able to verify anything.
That's right. No, that's something that happened less than a year, less than a century ago, right? And we can't actually nail that down flat. And that happened in living memory.
But this is why you raised a really good point earlier, in that we, from the 14th century, we've got specific provenance documented from the 14th century to today, that we can argue against that. But we don't have it before that. And that doesn't mean that it simply began in the 14th century. There is a possible argument that it could have existed beforehand. One thing I would say is, Mr. Wizard, you should be very careful when you're discussing this with Grace. She's an expert.
I'm going with science. I'm sticking with the 13th century. Science spoken.
I would pick your battles carefully. She'll eat you for breakfast on this one, I can assure you.
Nope, I don't care. I've researched, I've found whatever.
I've been in some discussion with Grace. Sorry, I was in some discussion with Grace on your Discord. She's been posting links to various items, mostly in support of the evidence, not in support of the Shroud, but in support of evidence which is accurate. A lot of it is good. But one of the things you tend to find is that even good evidence is skewed. There was mention of 120 tons of equipment. One of the reasons they had to shift so much equipment is they're not allowed to touch it. Now, as I said, the Catholic Church won't let anybody come into contact with it in any way. That means whether it's radar interferometry, X-rays, any sort of imaging, they're not actually able to touch the shroud. They're not allowed to come into contact with any part of it. Right.
And also, I think it's worth mentioning for all the people who are in the chat telling us all these things we haven't mentioned. We can't cover every single thing, and neither of us claim the experts on this subject either. So we welcome many of the comments that are being brought in. I am fully aware of the X-rays. I do know about STIRP, all of those things, but there's been no need to mention it because it's been discussed in the comment.
Sorry, I made a mistake there. It's Helen that I've been talking to on Discord. Made a slip of the tongue.
What I think, though, that's important is we've both come at
Sorry
this.
about that. Apologise for the mistake there.
We've come at this from two different perspectives, and we discussed it in a very reasonable way, acknowledging, conceding points where necessary, revising what we're saying in the light of evidence or a different opinion. And I would say that my opinion has changed from having the discussion. I am still of the opinion I don't know how it was made. I don't know who made it. And I don't know when it was made. I don't agree with the radiocarbon dating. And as I can't think of any other reason or any possible way that it could be created, then that only leaves one way that it could have been created, which is through an extraordinary event. So I would conclude that it's an extraordinary event that's created an extraordinary image. Even if it's fake, it doesn't matter because it's still an almost 1,000-year-old relic that is of extreme importance culturally, socially, and that isn't going to change.
It's like who built the pyramids? Aliens.
Was it aliens? Apparently, according to a lot of people I hear, it's aliens built it using frequency and vibrations, nothing else, just frequency and vibrations, that's it. If you ask them what a frequency or vibration is, they're not even able to get it.
So I would just say the one thing I would definitely say without shadow of doubt is that the Turin Shroud is 100% a real, genuine, authentic relic. The image is of unknown and extraordinary provenance, and we should value and respect it for its cultural significance, regardless of whether it's 1st century or whether it's some 14th century, because we don't know the answer. And as I said, because I don't know, I can't think of any other reason that would create such an image. I'm going to say that it was an extraordinary event that caused it.
I'm going to agree with that. I think it's, as I said, important for people to take comfort in their religion in the way that they like. And if they believe that these things are real, which I don't know, I don't know, as I was before it. I played the other side of it, but it's hard to just sit here and say, well, okay, I can go and wax lyrical and still boil it down to, we don't know. Will we ever know? I don't know.
I think it's possible that we could find out how it was created. Well, I think it's possible that we could create an exact replica at some point by using AI and all that sort of thing. That's possible.
We're in an age, we're in the computer age, and in the computer age, we're moving away from the handcrafts and the skills that would actually make us capable of creating this. There are things that were made only a couple of 100 years ago, in fact less, that we're now incapable of making in the way that they were made then. And as time goes by, it's actually less likely that the skills, the knowledge and the craft would be there for any potential for it to be made. So rather than moving closer to an age when we're going to get answers, the shroud itself will gradually decompose, if you like, right? Its degradation will go on through history. So it'll be less able to be analysed. And the skills that potentially created it will be less and less available. The knowledge will be fading. And I think it will always be what it is now, a mystery.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I also think as well, you touched on something that isn't considered as often, which is to do all of this testing is going to destroy it. When the whole point is we want to preserve it. So
that's right.
If finding out what it is involves destroying it, it's not worth it.
That's it.
And like I say, I can't say whether or not this is the image of Jesus. All I can say is that it's a very extraordinary image. It's a very extraordinary piece of cloth, and it's a hugely culturally significant artifact that's priceless.
And it's good for the Turin economy.
Yeah,
Yeah, without doubt.
Economy,
Like the
very
Loch Ness
good.
Monster, isn't it? Oh, look, they've not come up with an idea for tourism, have they?
I've never
Well,
been to it.
religious tourism has been going on since, in fact, since Jesus almost was alive.
It has. But my ex, the Indian one from Milan,
Even the
and her.
Crusaders stood on the hill.
Well, my ex's local church was where they've got the Last Supper. So there's lots of tourism there. That's an extraordinary thing to see.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, it was a normal painting. I didn't realise it was a wall, but that's just my ignorance.
A fresco.
Yeah, it's a fresco.
I tried painting on the walls and Mrs. went mental.
I bet she did.
Yes. I'm still doing the spinning tower.
One of the things, in response to the things that's been going on in the chat, which when you're talking, it's harder to engage with the chat. The whole subject is so expansive, and I have said that. There is no possible. You could sit here for a year and not cover all the points and angles that you can actually look into. There's so much of it, and its history is so in depth, including these research projects. You could spend a year discussing each one of them.
Quite literally spend an entire career on this easily, and still not cover all of it. And then the other thing as well, you're right about when this isn't criticism of people in the chat, but it is very easy when you're in a chat to sit there and type in the answers and look things up. But we have option because we're speaking to you at the moment. We've only got information that we've got beforehand, like here. So it is easy in the chat and go, oh yeah, you haven't said this. What about this? What about that?
Yeah, you won't know it all, mate. Bloody hell. Your brain.
Not only can you not know it all, but the expansive nature of all the research means that no one actually knows it all. And even the most learned of people on this subject have spent a lifetime. One of the bishops has spent a lifetime studying it. He came out of seminary and has been studying the Shroud his whole life. These people, I don't know, they must spend an awful lot of time eating tea and tucker. Because there is a limited amount of fact. And the fact is where you need to reside if you're going to get to any sort of honest conclusion. And the most honest conclusion is just I don't know. And it's new in a great big pile of things that I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's the nature of being just a person.
Well, for me, the closest thing I've got to compare it to that I've studied formally is the King Arthur legends and looking at where that comes from and how that developed over time and how it travelled and all those kind of things. I can certainly see that there are some parallels in that with the Shroud, but obviously it's a completely different discipline for both of us, really. Like, I was looking up and reading about Rob Rucker's theory. I haven't got a fucking clue half of what he meant. And I don't want to know either because it bores the shit out of me. But I understand what he was saying about how it could be created and how it could also affect the radiocarbon dating as well. That was clear to me. It was an interesting one to look up.
Yeah, just on the sideline. Was Arthur a Welshman?
Well, possibly. Again, the simple answer is we don't know.
We don't know.
We know that there's somebody called Arthur who fought against invaders, the Anglo-Saxons. So he could possibly have been a Welshman, yes. He's certainly most likely to have come from that area around the Welsh border regions.
Arthur's a very interesting character. Maybe we could do a talk on him someday.
Yeah, I can do that because, I studied him under the leading professor of Arthurian studies, PJC Field, excellent chap. And yes, he taught me quite well. There's a lot of Welsh, how can I put it, literature involved in the early formations of the Arthurian formation. Like, for example, the Mabinogion, which I'm sure somebody like Grace will know about, being Welsh.
It's weird, like
And I
you're saying
believe-
that, because I've got Merlin, which actually originally was Welsh, and it was Merdin.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to call the beard oil. I'm going to call it Merdin, because everyone says Merlin. It's just like everyone knows that. I'm like, no, before that, Merdin. So that's what my beard oil is going to be called, just to put a twist on it. But everything goes back to Wales.
Well, I think it was in the stories called The Dream of Rhonabwy, I believe. But yeah, they're Welsh mythic history. Yeah, Grace knows. I thought you would. I particularly liked the fact that I was studying that literature whilst being in Wales at the time.
That sounds
great.
I could be considered an expert on Arthur because I once read an article on it.
Well, when I was little, I did have a King Arthur book, so I learned at a young age.
I've read all 10 lines on Arthur. That makes me a world-class expert in the eyes of some of the people in the chat.
You are an expert, yes. But if you did want to go over things like that or have discussions about things like that, like, for example, I don't know, what things would you want to look at if you wanted a good understanding of English literary culture, for example? What sort of things should you read? What should you know about? Could be an interesting one.
I think the myth rather than the fact is more interesting when it comes to these things and how the myth developed. Because the facts all lead back to do you thinks and could be's, which is leading back around in a circle like the Ouroboros to the myth. And the myth is what matters, because the way the story has been developed is far more important now than the facts. The facts are so long ago that they don't really matter.
No,
it's what people believe now that matters.
Myths are not just silly stories people tell. Myths are the founding base of civilizations.
And I think we should hang on to our myth and legend. It's important to us.
I think we should, and that's why it doesn't bother me whether this image is Jesus or not. It is, yeah, great. But even if it isn't, yeah, it's great. It's still an amazing unsolved image and a great story and myth that goes along with it.
Yep.
Absolutely. I hope it stays a mystery, to be honest.
We're going to have to think about what we're doing in 2 weeks' time on the 4th of September for Freaky Friday. I'm open to suggestions if anyone wants to email me, or I can put a thing up, a community post, and just like not any choices, but just say, like, you know, state in the comments or something, and see what people say. Because we've done Assassins, didn't we? We've done the Loch Ness.
We did.
We've done sort of Bigfoot, but not really. And we've just done the Shroud of Turin. I've got 2. I've got big feet. That's better than Bigfoot. Just what I'd say so. 2's better than 1. Oh well.
Bigfoot.
Yeah.
We've already done that, Grace. It's bullshit. That's the whole argument. Gary. Now there's a good one. Gary's a man. He's just mentioned the myth from my own hometown of Black Shuck.
I'd like to clearly state I've never heard of that in my life.
Black Shuck was an Anglo-Saxon hellhound that used to appear in marshlands to lure travellers into the fens and drown them. But in my town, it specifically appeared during a thunderstorm and killed 2 people. And it's actually the black dog on top of a streak of lightning is the symbol of my town. It's a pretty cool image.
Weird. Straight away it goes, that's bullshit. Done it? My brain, I'll tell you. Terrible. But never heard of it. I'll have to look into that. That's quite interesting. But yeah, but we're going to have to think of something to do in 2 weeks' time anyway.
Well, there's a song by The Darkness dedicated to it called Black Shuck. That dog don't give a fuck.
Yeah, I saw that one, the big cat.
Actually, I've heard rumours of big cats in the Rendlesham Forest area.
I'm writing all this down. Black shark, big cats.
There's quite a few big cats in Britain. There's also in Scotland. And we also have a Scottish wildcat that catches people out because it's quite big. The tomcats can be quite large.
Is the wildcat the one that looks a bit like a lynx?
Yeah, but darker.
Yeah. It's not just an ordinary feral cat. It's a specific breed.
Sure, it's not Panther from Thundercats. Just
Could be.
It is a specific species. Yeah, I mean it's. They used to think it was house cats, but then there's a lady that breeds them and looks after them, and they've done genetic testing on them, and it is a completely separate lineage, so they now know it to be an actual Scottish wildcat.
Yeah.
But cats are little legends. They're good at hiding away.
They are. Well, there's plenty of places in Scotland, up in those highlands.
Well, there's places like Wester Ross. If you've ever drove through it, you'd realise it is a wilderness. Even if you look at it on a map, there's no habitation. I did mention going to certain places in Scotland even today and making sure that you had surplus fuel requirements. Because after talking about that at the time, I looked to check up where the fuel stops were on that very Mallaig road. You're still stuck. If you don't make it in Mallaig, you're about 80 miles for fuel.
Yeah.
So
wild.
Large parts of Scotland are still wild. And places like Wester Ross are a wilderness. You could hide whole villages out there and never see them. They would never be discovered.
Yeah.
And it's mountainous. It's very rough terrain. And in the winter, let's face it, you're not covering any of that on foot, especially without just succumbing to hypothermia exposure.
And that's
so exactly things like the Scottish wildcat, they thrive in these areas.
I think the places like that, they're just tailor-made to create myths and legends, though, aren't
they? Unfortunately, people look into these things in the distance, and the myths and legends grow in their mind, not on the land.
Yeah.
But yeah, these wildernesses create it.
And that's exactly why it creates black shuck around here, because you've got lots of fenland, you've got lots of marshland. You often get these really dense pockets of mist or fog that sit low on the ground and look really quite spooky, which people, if they know the area and would just carried on walking, they'd end up drowned.
That's people for you, innit?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of rural areas in Norfolk, yes. But I live, Gary, in Suffolk. I don't associate with foreigners.
I don't think this is one of the things that, see, in the past, these areas wouldn't have been as unpopulated as they are now, because people lived in these areas for the fish, for the water life, and they thrived in those small hamlets, if you like. In the modern age, people move into civilization, big cities, because of access to shops. We're moved away from an agrarian lifestyle. They need access to goods, travel, work.
Yeah.
So just like Glencoe, for instance, I mean, Glencoe ended overnight with a massacre. But these areas were quite highly populated, sparsely, but there was a lot of people. They weren't always tightly packed together, but there was a lot of people living within eyeshot of another house, if you like, or another habitation of some kind. And that's went away in the modern age. Now these places are just big expanses of wilderness, because modern life doesn't suit being remote like that.
No, I think I understand what you mean completely, but I'm sad though, because I'm used to it being the other way around. I'm used to there not being so many people around. Where I grew up, I was in the tiny little hamlets where there'd literally be 2 or 3 houses, and that would be it. And then it's just miles and miles of nothing. So I live in a town now, I'm very used to that. But I think somebody that didn't would probably find that quite unnerving.
Mm.
I mean, me, I loved walking around at night time. I've always preferred the night, and there's nothing better, I don't think, going walking out when it's pitch black and you see the stars is fantastic. But someone that doesn't know that shit themselves.
Well,
And
the
the
monsters
sounds,
do come out at night in the big cities, don't they?
I find big cities terrifying. They're just claustrophobic. It's can't stand it. I like a bit of space. Quite a lot of space.
Should have been an astronaut then.
I should, yes. But
mind you ain't got a lot of space in the shuttle to get there. But once you get there,
do you know what? I think I'm probably high enough.
Very good.
No, it's been a really interesting discussion. So thanks for allowing us to have that, and
yeah, that was
also
good
to my honourable gentleman for a very respectful, decent conversation, which is a rarity from the YouTube.
It was.
It certainly is, and it is a pleasure. Thanks very much.
Yeah, we've got plenty to look up now.
Care, everyone. See you next time.
That, take it easy, mate. Take it easy. Thanks for that, Slim. Appreciate it, mate. You are a valuable guest. Thank you, sir.
Take care.
Au revoir. Well, there we go. How cool was that? That could have gone either way, couldn't it? But that was good. There's more. I don't know about you lot, but there's more for me to look up. I've got to look up more stuff. Oh, it never ends, does it? So, yeah, got to keep an open mind and look here, look there, and look everywhere and see what the hell's going on. But yeah, happy days. So thanks to every single one of you in chat. I appreciate you spending your evenings here listening to Jake and Slim. And the discussion with the Turin Shroud is very interesting. But like I say, got... yeah, you're right though, Trigger. There's so much not discussed. It's a massive talking point, isn't it? Huge. But I mean, what we went through, I mean, I've got enough there to look up and learn and that. And there's people in the comments saying about things and that I've got to look up. So it's never ending. It's never ending. So yes, but keep your minds open, people. We never know. We don't know everything, do we? We like to be right, but sometimes you just got to bite your arse and admit you're wrong or whatever. But it is what it is. It's all good. Yeah, but it takes people to Jesus. Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. If it takes people to believe in Jesus, then yeah, I'm not going to comment on that. That's that's good. Yeah, that's the flip side of the coin. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, it's good. So thanks to all of you in chat, Jenny, Pat the milkman, who's not obviously delivering milk. Just saying. Trigger Christian, Nelly, Ollie, Helen. All of you, I'm going to forget names. That's why I don't normally say names. Mad Monkey Seeds. I feel bad if I miss someone. I'm like, oh, sorry, Bobby. And everyone else I missed. My bad. Gary. Grace. Did I say Grace? Oh, yeah. It's been a pleasure anyway, everyone. Thank you very much for watching. Take it easy. Back on Sunday. It's a call-in. I don't know what about yet, but obviously, if you're here and you want to call in and have your say, of course you can. Happy days. So stay safe. Have a very enjoyable evening. Enjoy your Saturday. I might be a bonus live Saturday to go through the video that I should have done Thursday, but my internet. We'll see. But take it easy. And like I say at the end of every single video, live stream, you name it, that is the wizard's words.